So if I cut a 1 1/8, add in a saw curve, cut a 1 1/8, guess what that comes out to be? Yeah, exactly. Basically, you got to think of the pith or the juvenile core as a fault, a streak of ugly. Basically, instead of potentially ruining 3 slabs or boards, if you can contain it as best as you can in one, you're going to have these guys come out perfect, and you go down to only potentially having the pith or the juvenile core ruin 1 board. These are old logs. These have been on the ground, I believe, probably going on a year. They are as solid as a rock. For those of you who guessed on the last video, yes, these are Kentucky coffee. Prehistoric tree. Used to be the state tree of Kentucky. Started losing its foothold. Basically, its range was being heavily decreased, not really through man, through its own inability to adapt. Long story there, but the bottom line is we've got a few of them. They make wonderful live edge slabs. These are the last, I guess 5 I've got. Sawed up a good many of them, and we're going to do some filming, but they are some little guys. In case you're wondering why they're called Kentucky coffee, is because the seeds are a little bit toxic. Supposedly, and I'm not a tree guy, but supposedly they have found the seed pods in the fossilized stomachs of woolly mammoths and other dinosaurs. Apparently back then they could digest the seed pods, but these days the seed pods are slightly toxic, hence the name Kentucky coffee. Used to be common enough where it was a state tree, Kentucky, from what I understand. I'm a sawmillologist. Take logs and saw them. So, actually, I think a treeologist is called a dendrologist. Unlike a dentist, which works on your teeth, a dendrologist works on trees. The old timers knew that the seeds were slightly toxic, so they would make a drink out of it. And if you drank it, you'd get as high as a kite. I assumed you wouldn't die, I guess. So I would be interested to know if anybody out there has actually had Kentucky coffee and survived. The old Kentuckians did. These logs, for various reasons, have been sitting in one log yard or another for over a year. I originally found them in a local log yard. Every time I would drive by, the log just stayed there. And I talked to the guy. I said, hey man, why don't you sell me them logs? And the foreman of the log yard went, no, we got those sold to somebody else. And I'd drive by, and after a while I'd go in and ask again. And one day the owner was there, and I said, why don't you sell me them logs? And he looked at the other guy and says, these logs are still here? And the guy said, yeah, they never paid their bill. So he said, hey Robert, you want to pay their bill? And I went, I got a checkbook, I'll pay their bill in a heartbeat. And he says, we've been waiting long enough, and since they hadn't paid, they're your logs. Have at them and load them up. They're really old trees for their size. I mean, they're not but 14, 16 inches in diameter. And the odd thing is, with them sitting around for so long, they are as solid as a rock. It's as if they were cut down yesterday, other than the bark coming off and the gray on the outside. I mean, these things are solid. Anyway, let's get this thing going and see how these turn out. I'm sawing at 2 3/8. So ideally I'd like to have the pith centered in a 2 3/8 inch board. Well, half a 2 3/8 plus saw kerf is 1 1/8. What I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly drop the saw head to line up on the center of the kerf or the pith. I'm going to go up here to my Sawmill computer and I'm going to program in. I'm going to go to auto up 1 1/8 of a 2 3/8 inch board. So if I put the middle of the saw blade right on the pith, right on the juvenile core, then that's my index point. I can go set my AccuSet to auto up 1 1/8. 1 1/8 puts it basically in the middle of a 2 3/8 inch board. I'm going to start with the saw blade right here. I'm going to go 1 1/8. Then I'm going to go auto up 2 3/8 and keep walking up to the top of the log. And then when I start dropping, I'm going to drop from that spot, but my auto down is going to be 2 3/8, right? So it's going to drop, and then it's going to drop. And that means once I get that first cut made, whether I'm in auto down at 2 3/8 or roll the log over to pattern mode 2 3/8, that center is always going to be in the center of a 2 3/8 inch board. So I'll just show you, but the bottom line is it starts by putting the band. So it starts by me centering the band. It's actually a little high. I need to go down just a hair right there in the center. And I'm going to go on my computer, go 1 1/8 up. Then I'm going to go 2 3/8, 2 3/8. As once I get here, I can put in auto dropper pattern and go 2 3/8, 2 3/8, 2 3/8, and it'll leave that in the center. Let's just do it. I'll show you how I do it on the AccuSet here. So right now I'm in the center. I'm gonna go up here into auto up. My pattern 1A auto up. It's 1 1/8. Remember when I hit this button, it'll automatically go up, the trigger button. So now I'm up 1 1/8. I'm gonna go to auto up. In my case, program 2, it's 2 3/8. I go, watch the saw head. I'm gonna go up 2 3/8, go up 2 3/8, go up 2 3/8, and that's my first cut. So the idea being then when I switch back into pattern mode or drop, or I start dropping at 2 3/8, and I can show you here kind of as a demo. I'm gonna go back to 2 3/8, and I'm gonna do auto drop at 2 3/8. Watch, it'll drop and it should hit that center. There's one drop. This simulates me sawing the log. So see how the blade is gonna end up on either side of that pith, and that means that that pith will be centered in that board. I can just simply hit auto up again, and it'll carry me right back up to where I was. That's my first cut. Wood-Mizer has multiple modes to operate from. One is this icon, and that icon is indexed from your last time you set the 0 with the button. This one is from the bed. This is called pattern mode. This is auto up and auto down. I use them both I use them all the time, but when I'm doing live edge sawing and I really want to get the pith centered, then I'm going to use this combination. Pattern mode, it references from the bed. So all I'm doing from auto up or auto down is I'm establishing an arbitrary reference face. When I make that cut, I can then rotate that face down to the bed, go into pattern mode, and now that is the reference face, which is the bed. Does that make any sense at all? I don't know if it does, but I've set my reference point right here. I'm gonna zero the system out, come back here. I hope I'm not making you seasick, but I'm gonna hit auto down. And I got my program set at 2A, which is 2 3/8. So every time I saw board and hit the trigger, it's going to automatically drop it down 2 3/8 until I decide to roll the log over. Kind of gets it wide enough. I'm going to go up, I'm going to bring it back. So this is now the reference face. The cool thing that the Setworks does not care where I raise the band up to either eject the board or whatever. When I hit the button on the joystick, it's going to remember where that height is, and it's going to drop it down exactly 2 3/8. There goes the head, and then boom. Of course, you can confirm it. So this board is going to be exactly 2 3/8 of an inch thick. I raise up, I'm going to bring this back. Doesn't matter where the head is. It can be anywhere. It's still remembering that original face. I hit the button, drops 2 3/8. Ow. Pull this back. So now I'm right where I want to be. I'm 1 1/8. This cut's 1 1/8 over that, give or take. So when I take a 2 3/8, it'll center it. We're going to switch to pattern mode. So now that's to the bed. This is where it's supposed to be. This is about 1 1/8 off the bed. Go into pattern mode. It's going to calculate up 2 3/8, 2 3/8, 2 3/8. And if that board's where it needs to be, that's good. One of the cool things about the AccuSet is I can also just figure out where that's going to be, and say it's weird here and I got a lot of 1 inch. I don't really want to waste the board, so I can change my drop to 1 1/8 for one board. So if I cut a 1 1/8, add in a saw curve, cut a 1 1/8, guess what that comes out to be? Yeah, exactly. 2 3/8 of an inch, and that's how I've established my live edge slab or my 8/4 thickness at 2 3/8. I can break out of the 2 3/8 inch auto up, auto down, drop pattern, whatever, and quickly switch to 1 1/8. So I can do as many 2 3/8 as I want, or as many 1 1/8 as I want. All the numbers will always come out the same. I don't know if I'm going to have to do this here. I've already had to do it a couple of times. You can see these boards are... So I'm going to go higher than I need to be. I'm going to set pattern mode, program 2A, 2 3/8, and I'm going to hit the little joystick button, and we're going to drop it. And you'll see every time it drops, I'm going to check it. And actually that looks pretty good. See this little arrow here? That shows me how many cuts I have to make. So I'm going to get 3 cuts out of this, what's left of this log. My next board, a lot of stress. See where my arrow is right there? Down. Take my last cut. My first cut, second cut, third cut, and sure enough, that guy's centered right there. It may sound a lot more complicated than it is. It really isn't. It all works out in the end. It's easy peasy, no big deal. I don't know if that's how the saying goes, but It just did. So anyway, let's get these stacked up. Let's do another one. All right, we just manually set everything where the saw blade's in the center. Back to auto up, pattern 2A, 2 3/8, 2 3/8, 2 3/8. When I make this cut, every drop after that is going to be 2 3/8. This is giving me my desired 6-inch wide board all the way across. We're going to drop, drop, drop. This is my reference face. I've got the saw set. I'm gonna make a couple more drops there. So remember, I'm gonna auto down 2 3/8. Gonna make that cut. As our auto down, 2 3/8. Okay, not nearly as much stress. So remember that this is my reference face, which is now down. So when I go into pattern mode, it'll do 2 3/8, 2 3/8, 2 3/8, 2 3/8. Once I cut this face, it's always going to be a perfect multiple to this one, which means I can flip those two as many times as I want and never lose track. Important things about having a pattern mode on your sawmill, no matter what brand, that will always give you an absolute measurement from the deck. That's one important thing. The other important thing is to give you a measurement from where your band was. You really need both things. Go into pattern mode. It's going to set it to the, now I'm that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cuts above. Do it again. That's my first cut right there. It's going to automatically drop me to my next cut. Do one more. So here's the cool thing. Remember I was telling you how it always, in pattern mode, is referencing to the bottom of the bed from there. Since we know this is sawn as a multiple reference from the bottom bed, I can flip this as many times as I want, and I can saw it from the top or the bottom. It's always going to come out with a perfect dog board down here. So for example, I could just make one more drop and cut it, which is what I would normally do. I would not have stopped. When I'm trying to make a point, I'm going to flip this over. We're going to saw from this side, and this side will then be referenced to the bed. So let's just flip it. Auto up, go up 1 on A, 2 3/8, that one, make this cut. In the pattern, 2A, drop it, drop it. Or I don't have anything to clamp to. Clamp to that's not flat. Cant is going to ride up because I don't have anything square. But since I cut that side right there, I can flip it up, and I can tell that's going to grip well. Get the drag back, so drag this guy back a little bit. Right there. Now you can see when I drop the back stop, bring it on, see how it'll actually engage them now. So now they're biting really well. and it doesn't have that tendency to pop up. Still have this centered in that last board. Remember, I'm still in pattern mode, so it's going to automatically drop. And sure enough, that board is perfectly centered. The pith is perfectly centered like it's supposed to be. And it was done. Drop everything and feed her back. One question I may not have answered is, why am I trying to get the pith centered in the board? Basically, you got to think of the pith or the juvenile core as a fault, a streak of ugly. And if it breaks out of a board, it's going to look bad, because it's typically going to crack, or it's going to have some issues with it. So the more you can contain that core of the log in one board, especially if it's a live edge slab, certainly the two other slabs on either side are going to look good. But if you're lucky, the one in the middle is also going to look good, because those cracks are not going to come out into the face of the board. Basically, instead of potentially ruining 3 slabs or boards, if you can contain it as best as you can in one, you're going to have these guys come out perfect, and you go down to only potentially having the pith or the juvenile core ruin one board. We will see y'all next week. Bye. Thanks for visiting our sawmill. Click on the links above to see more of our videos.